in this step, we will add the navigation, the main navigation for our 4-page website. Now, I'm going to use CSS Flex Box for the navigation. Why? Because it's crazy simple. My preference is using CSS Floats and Clears for my navigation, especially if I'm going from a horizontal nav bar to a vertical stacked navigation. Okay, again, my preference is using Floats and Clears, but we can accomplish the same thing, albeit at a simpler level, using CSS Flex Box. All right, and you can learn more about CSS Flex Box on this YouTube playlist. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get this set up. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to go to our source code. For our website layout, we have 4 pages. Now, you may be going down the route of extra credit and adding additional pages, but the basic requirement is 4 pages. So inside my nav element, which I'm going to point out can be before the header or after the header. It's really up to you where you position the nav. Matter of fact, if you wanted the nav on one of the sides of the page in a stacked nav bar, you could do that also. We're going to keep this really simple. So, being we have 4 pages, let's go to our nav, and I'm going to create, matter of fact, I'm going to pause the video and just write the code real quick. I have added 4 divs. Each of the divs will have a link inside, which will link to one of the other pages in this approach. So we're using Flexbox. So I need to tell the nav element, and I'm going to use main nav, the class, as the target. Okay. So I need to tell nav to be a flex element. All right. And in that playlist, which reviews Flexbox, I use W3 schools. So basically what we need to do is tell the parent element that it's going to display flex. Okay, so a really quick way is just copy what's here. Let's go back to our CSS and we will find our main nav. And after my color here, I'll just paste in display flex. Now again, I'm not real concerned about the formatting. I'll fix all of the formatting towards the end of the demonstration. All right, so we're now telling our element to display flex. So now main nav is set up to display flex. What we need to do now is establish, are we going to create a row or a column? So what we're going to do is set the flex direction, and we're going to set our direction in this case to row. So we'll go back, and after display flex, we'll do flex direction, and I'll change column to row. Now what we're going to do is change the width from 100%. Okay, so let's go ahead. There's 4 elements, there's going to be 4 links. So we need each of these to be 25%. So let's change our width to 25%. Okay, and we'll go ahead and save. And let's go and see what we have here. Okay, so you're now going to see 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Okay, so again, 1, 2, 3, 4 and then you'll see your nav area. But what I did is I set the width of the nav, okay, to 25% of the width, total width of the browser. And what I need to do is add the 25% to each of the divs inside. All right, so let's go back. And what we need to do is set this width back to 100%, like so. And we need to go to the source code because what we need to do is target each of these divs. Now, one way to do this is because the divs are direct descendants of nav, we can target main nav and then point at each of the divs. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go back to our CSS. Let's find main nav, and I'll go ahead and I'll write the rule. I'll pause the video, write the rule, and then we'll talk about it. Now, we're going to target each of the divs, which will become the buttons for our navigation, or the links. So we have .main nav, and then what we're going to do is with the greater than sign, we're going to target the div element. So this is basically saying target the descendants, the direct descendants. And in our case, we have 4 divs, which are direct descendants inside the element with the class main nav. And I'm going to set the width to 25% of each of the divs. So let's take a look, and you'll see that we have all 4 buttons now showing up. Let's go and set the text align to center, and we will save, and our text should now be in the center. Now what we want to do, well, you don't have to, but let's just say that we wanted some space around each of the buttons, so it looks like individual buttons instead of one big long colored background. Now we could just change the background color for each of these. Okay, we could do that, but it wouldn't be overly consistent that way. So let's go ahead and just add some margin on each of the sides of our divs. Okay, so let's go back. All right, so let's, after, I tend to add margin after the width, so let's go ahead and add our margin. And for right now, let's just say that we are going to use an absolute value. And that absolute value will be 10 pixels. Okay, so I don't want any on the top. And let's say that we don't want any on the right for right now, none on the bottom, but we will add 20 px only on the left. All right, so let's go ahead and save, and we'll see what happens here. Oh, I probably should take my background color, and I'm just going to copy the background color, and we'll go to the end after our text align. We'll paste this in, and let's change our background color to black. That way we'll have the aqua going all the way across the background of nav, just so we know where this element is, okay, see how it's behaving. And we'll now add our background black, okay, and that will only be applied to each of the divs. All right, so let's go ahead and save, and let's take a look. All right, so we now have margin on the left-hand side, but we don't have any space over here, okay? So let's just go back and say we want 20 pixels on the right also. And we will save. Now you'll see that there's 40 here, okay? But we get 20 on the outside, so our buttons will appear evenly spaced. Now my type is no longer showing up because the default would be black. So we would come back and let's just say we set the color to white, just to make it simple. And then we want some space so our type isn't slammed to the top and the bottom. So let's just add some padding, and we will add, I don't know, let's add 10 pixels all the way around on the padding, and we'll save. And you now have what is your navigation, the beginnings of your navigation. And what's really nice is basically this is responsive, okay? Now at one point we're going to want all of these to stack up because that would be a nicer approach in a mobile, okay? But for right now, this is going to work perfectly fine. So we're using Flexbox to create what is going to be the beginning of our navigation. All right, so I'm going to pause for a moment here, and I'm going to add a bit more to both the source code and the CSS to create what will be our links to our other pages. So the first step to making a link for our buttons, for our menu, is first we add the anchor element, and then we add the href attribute, and now we need to add the value to our attribute, otherwise what we want to link to. And in this case, this first button is going to return to the first page. So this will be primer 01 HTML. So we'll just type in primer 01.html. So I'm just going to copy primer 01 HTML, and let's paste this inside, and then we'll modify. So then primer 2, 3, and 4. So we are now going to have links to all 4 of our pages. And remember, I'm just using primer 1 through 4 for the demo. You would have yours named according to the requirements for the exercise. All right, so now we have the basic navigation and the 4 buttons or the 4 links to go to the 4 different pages. Okay, so now what we need to do is just add a little bit of CSS to make the buttons, to format them to appear and behave correctly. All right, so let's go ahead and go to our CSS. So I'm going to save, and we'll go to our CSS, and we will create the rules which will style our buttons. So we have main nav and then our 4 divs which we have styled. But if we look at our page, we now have the type is no longer white. The type is the default color for a hyperlink, and we have the underline. The text decoration is an underline. So what we need to do is target the anchor specifically, okay? So if we go back to our CSS, what we need to do is create main nav and then the greater than sign and then div and then a or anchor. Okay, and we can even say a colon link if we want to take it to that to that level. But we need to create what is a new rule, and we need to remove some of the styles from this current rule to the new rule, which will target the anchor, okay, the anchor element specifically. So I'm going to pause and then do that real quickly. All right, so I have basically copied main nav greater than div, pasted it right underneath, added the A for anchor, okay? So now we're targeting main nav, each of the divs, descendant divs, and then specifically the anchor element inside. Now, there's a couple things. I could take the width away here. Now you notice that I've removed the color white up here. I've left the background color, but we could probably also get rid of the width here because we're telling this element to be that width. We're telling this element to have margin, and we could probably get rid of this margin. We don't need the text, okay, alignment. We will add text decoration none. The padding can come away, and that basically leaves us with adding the text decoration and applying the color white to the anchor element. So let's go ahead and save, and let's just take a quick look here, and everything should be laying out correctly. And you'll notice when I hover over 1, 2, 3, or 4, we get the little pointy finger here letting us know that this is a hyperlink. We could take this one step further by changing the background color and the color of our type. Let's go ahead and do that. So we'll go back to our code. I'll write the code and pause for a moment and be right back. What you will notice is I have added colon link. So we are targeting specifically the pseudo link, okay, the state of our button. And we are then going to, then you'll probably notice I also removed the background color from the div, and I added that to the link. So the color for the type will be white, the background will be black. Then basically I copied this after adding the pseudo link, and I changed, after pasting this entire rule below it, I changed the pseudo to the hover state, and then we changed the color of the type to black and then background color to white. Let's go ahead and save. Okay, now what you're going to see is our background color is now only around our type. Okay, so we need to fix that. So now our pseudo, our link, our anchor element here, if you will, this is an inline element. And we're seeing that color only around the text because our text is an inline element. So we need to tell the text to behave as if it's a block level element. So what we'll do is set the display to block. Now we're going to have to take this one step further because now we're telling this to be a block level element, but we're not adding any of the padding like what we have up here. Okay, so I'm going to take this padding and let's just cut this padding from up here, and we will apply the padding down here. So I'll do the padding right above the display, and then we will save. And let's go ahead and take a look, and you'll see now that The background color is in fact taking up the entire element because we have told the anchor element to display itself as a block level element. So it's going to take up 100% of the width, and it's going to respect the height because we added the padding also. And you'll also see on our hover, we have what is the switch of the background colors and the color of our type. All right, so what we have done is used CSS Flex Box to create a navigation bar which is responsive to a degree. What we need to do next is we need this menu to turn into a mobile menu or stack up when we get to a certain width. And we'll explore that next.